Welcome to the Lodgify interview. And today I'll be talking to one of the biggest, if not the biggest, personalities in the vacation rental industry, Matt Landau. So, welcome, Matt.
Hello, good morning, good
Good,
afternoon,
good
good
afternoon and good
evening,
morning to
good
you.
night.
Yes. So, I'm going to try and remember. Matt does about a million things, so I'm going to try and remember what some of your biggest projects. But I know you're very well known for your Unlocked podcast, which features innovative people in the industry, and also for the original vacation rental marketing blog called VRMB. And what I personally love a lot is your newsletter. It always makes me chuckle. It's really authentic, and I look forward to it every week. So that's kind of part of VRMB. And then you've also got some docutainment or what do you call them? Edutainment projects, right?
Right, yeah.
Which I'm sure you'll tell us about. The latest one being Homerunners. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you to introduce yourself and tell us how you first got started in the industry.
Well, I first got started the same way I think most people got started, and that was completely accidentally, without any plan. I was working in Costa Rica at the time, just out of graduation, and was told that I needed to check out a little historic district in the Republic of Panama, which is one country to the south.
Yeah.
And I visited this little neighborhood called Casco Viejo. I stayed in what was at that time the only nice place to stay, which was a vacation rental company called Los Cuatro Tulipanes. And I fell in love with the neighborhood. It was a really special place. It was a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it had been left to deteriorate over the years. And in hindsight, it was staying in that vacation rental that not only opened up the neighborhood for me and really gave me a sense of place, but also got me started in the vacation rental industry, because about 1 year later, I ended up purchasing with a partner that vacation rental company with zero experience. Suddenly, I was thrust into the role of host. And again, the only place to stay in town. So this was a nice environment to learn. Myself and my business partner just kind of winged it for the first several years. And because there was no competition, it was a nice, easy place to learn those lessons the hard way. That process of trial and error, this was way before the time of Airbnb, required a lot of A/B testing and being very deliberate about what was working, what wasn't, and doubling down on the things that work, and obviously removing from your portfolio the things that were not working in generating bookings, in building a brand. And this kind of segued into my sharing of those best practices with other vacation rental hosts, owners, and managers throughout the world. And back then, there was no other real good information online. It was completely barren. And it just so happened that other people enjoyed reading those best practices, how to generate more bookings for your vacation rental property. And that was kind of my kickstart into the world of education. I ended up selling that business about 10 years later, and now focus exclusively on the educational aspect, which we now refer to as VRMB.
Okay, brilliant. So I'm going to ask, there are now, unlike when you started, there are a lot of competitors, both in terms of vacation rentals and in terms of experts giving advice. What is it that you bring that is special? What makes you different? What's your selling point, your unique selling point?
There are so many experts, and I have mixed feelings about them. I tend to get very suspicious when any expert is promising that you can get rich quick overnight, because anybody who's been in this business knows that that's far from the truth. And I actually don't really consider myself an expert. I see myself more as a connector. I see myself as a spotter of patterns. I surround myself with lots of vacation rental professionals, lots of people who are doing the job on the ground from the moment they get started to the moment they build their business, in some cases, to the moment they sell their business. And when you see a lot of these people, you begin to see that there's some commonalities, some things that the ones who are succeeding are doing in common, and conversely, some things that the folks who don't last are doing as well. So my role is to sort of synthesize those patterns and to share them with folks so they can take advantage of what the most successful folks are doing. So I do see lots of experts. I'm just very cautious for newcomers to be very wary of who you're following. What are they promising? What are they teaching? Ensure that it is a hospitality focused kind of expertise as opposed to lease arbitrage or any of the other number of models that people are practicing these days. Anything that gets too far away from the core of this business, which is taking care of visitors and ensuring that they have amazing vacations, is worth getting a little bit suspicious over.
I guess that fits neatly with your mantra, which is help, don't sell, right? That's kind
Yes.
of summing that up.
Yes.
Um, that's what you bring. Amazing. So okay. And then I wanted to ask, because you've been a host, as I understand, for the first 10 years you were a host, right?
Yeah.
And sort of doing the dirty work. And then you refer on your website somewhere to burnout, then you burned out, and that's when you decided to sell the company and move on. And I was wondering, because I think I hear a lot about that, about burnout and the risk of burnout. If you wanted to tell us a bit about that, and also how to prevent that, for other hosts.
Well, I burned out myself. After a period of time, someone challenged me. They said, "You're clearly not as passionate about this as you were at the beginning. It's time to move on." So first of all, I think looking at burnout as a terribly negative thing is maybe not fair. People burn out from relationships. People burn out from where they live. People burn out from businesses. But to reduce the chances of burnout, especially early on, there's one huge truth that I've noticed that people need to embrace. And that is viewing their vacation rental or short-term rental property or properties as a business. And this is not always the first realization, because a lot of folks just get started accidentally. It's so easy to just put your property up overnight. And it's easy to just wing it and to sort of go make decisions on the fly and not really to plan like a business. And what we found is that the moment you do start looking at it as a business, even if it's one property that you're renting out for a limited set of nights per year, viewing it as a business suddenly changes your entire lens, because you start looking at things differently. And when you view something as a business, when you begin to put in place a business plan, whether it's a marketing plan or an accounting plan or an operational plan, you suddenly have a path. You have guideposts. You have things that you can look at to say, okay, we're making progress. We're going down the right path, as opposed to, and this was, I think, me to a degree, entering without any plan, not really viewing it as a business at the very beginning. And even when things are going really well, you begin to drift and you begin to sort of fall into these territories when suddenly you lift your head up, you're like, what am I doing? It's been several years so far and I don't have a marketing plan. I don't have my own brand. It's been several years and I don't have an accountant. This is the big pivot. And if our viewers at the very beginning of their journey, at the middle of their journey, or even towards the end of their journey, it's never too late to make a plan. And having that plan based on the input of others who have executed that plan, which we can talk about in a little bit, makes all the difference.
Okay, brilliant. So in terms of the type of hosts that you see out there and joining the industry at the moment, are they different? What is the typical profile? Are they different from when you started out?
Yes, very different. Good and bad, in my opinion, for the broader industry. Although who am I to even judge? I think everybody has their own right to choose why they're doing something. But I'll break it down to you from my vantage point. The good is that the hosts these days embrace technology better than any generation of hosts I've seen in the past. I see people just getting started and they piece together a technology stack like Lodgify, and then they'll put a dynamic pricing tool, and then they'll use a guidebook app. This is amazing. I spent years trying to persuade people to embrace this kind of technology. So this is an amazing, amazing upgrade in the acumen of vacation rental or short-term rental hosts. I would say also that they are incredibly motivated and energized in ways that I think hosts from the past were kind of dabbling on the side. They maybe weren't in it because they were passionate about it. They were just kind of doing it to make ends meet. A lot of those folks are now being replaced by this new generation of hosts who are just full, ready to go. A lot of them are younger. A lot of them are coming out of university. A lot of them haven't gone to university. They're renegades. They're doing things their way. And this industry rewards renegades in that sense. I see also some flip sides of hosts these days that I think could be dangerous. As I mentioned earlier, the get rich quick mentality does not end up well for anybody. It doesn't end up well for the guests. It doesn't end up well for the neighbors who have to deal with the guests. It doesn't end up well for the entrepreneur, because this is not a get rich quick industry. And more broadly speaking, when you look at it solely as a way to make money, inherently, the hospitality tends to take a backseat. And I want to be very clear. Viewing this as a business means viewing this in order to generate profits. That should be the top tier, or at least alongside the top priorities of all of our participants. However, if you're only doing it to make money, all of these hospitality things are going to drive you absolutely crazy. The guest who calls who says that their vacation is not the memory that they envisioned because they don't have XYZ. This will drive you absolutely nuts. And I go back to reminding folks that this is a hospitality business in order to calibrate those expectations. So I like to suggest that anybody who wants to enter the industry, anybody that wants to make a plan for this business moving forward, surround yourself with a handful of people who are running businesses in a way that you would like to have yourself several years down the line. Don't surround yourself with people who are promising the world. Surround yourself with people who are actively doing this and who have built something that you would love to build and own several years down the road. That is the best way to calibrate expectations. And I believe calibrating expectations for our participants, our owners, our managers, and our hosts, for our guests, for our home owners whose properties we're managing, and for our neighbors and our community members. This calibrating of expectations for me makes all the difference.
Okay. So maybe moving or linking to that, some of the biggest threats that you see in the industry. So obviously this is one of them, the kind of get rich quick mindset, right? But also, I know you talked in one of your podcasts about the sea change in the industry. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that and what that means for the new hosts starting out.
Yeah, there's a lot of threats, and we can talk about opportunities too. I like to make sure we're looking at both sides of all this, but the threats I think are most pressing to our constituents are as follows. One, margins. Margin creep is the way that a lot of people refer to it. This is a small margins business. And when you start adding in all these additional layers to the business, and you don't necessarily have the power to increase the price to your customer, your cost of running the business comes creeping up on the cost that you're charging your customer. And that's a very tricky thing to get out of. We could talk about some strategies to completely avoid this little space in a few minutes, but margins getting smaller and smaller is very real. They call it margin creep. Number two, there will be huge market corrections in every market around the world over the next year or two. And this is up against the last year or two, which have been anomalies, insanely successful for a lot of our participants. However, not realistic. There was just this explosion of demand for short-term rentals and vacation rentals coming out of COVID. Our natural craft that we have been refining over time suddenly, and everybody wanted to stay in one of these properties, and there was limited demand, supply, which meant that everybody gets to enjoy the good times. However,
and it's not sustainable, right? That's not sustainable longer term.
You can't have the explosions forever. No. So I think most of our colleagues are starting to experience, and I hear this from markets around the world, they're starting to experience a correction in which the demand has dropped. The supply, the amount of properties that are on the market, is about the same. In some cases, it's gone a little bit up. And suddenly, you don't have that kind of ratio that existed 2 years back. So a lot of these newcomers who just got started are like, what the hell? This isn't as good as it was last year. And they're right. But this, if you haven't planned it out like a business, throws an entire wrench in your plans. It pulls the rug right out from underneath your business. And so we need to be very aware of this. And the way to thwart this kind of market correction is to become extremely focused on your positioning, what it is that you are offering and how it does compare to other offerings on the market. But these threats, I think the market being corrected and margins creeping smaller and smaller, pale in comparison to unfair regulation, which, if you have not started thinking about already, means you have not been paying attention, because conversations are taking place behind the scenes in every market. And if you do not have, you and your fellow vacation rental professionals do not have a seat at that table, you will be lunch. If you are not on the menu, you will be lunch. They will eat your business. And we're seeing this happen everywhere. So for vacation rental owners and managers who are not actively involved in their local alliances, who are not actively keeping track of what are the laws and the regulatory status in this destination, they're in for a very rude awakening, because that is true. If what we just mentioned is the rug being pulled out from underneath you, this is like the entire house's foundation being yanked out from what you thought you had. So please listen to the podcast that we've done together with Dana Lubner, who's an advocacy specialist. It's called How to Save Your Vacation Rental Business. And it walks through all the best practices that we have for being a responsible vacation rental advocate, because this will hit everybody.
Okay, brilliant. Yes, I was going to ask you about regulation specifically. So maybe now, to balance that, opportunities. Are there still opportunities, having said all of that? And what are they?
Indeed. The category awareness of vacation rentals or short-term rentals is growing, and it still has more room to grow. Travelers, for the first time ever, are choosing vacation rentals or short-term rentals instead of hotels. This is a big responsibility. This is also a big opportunity for all of us to capture new demand. There has never been a better time, I believe, to run a professional vacation rental business than right now. But you need to be shrewd about it. And the moment you start being a little bit more shrewd and disciplined and planning out what this business looks like a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you immediately separate yourself from this other crowd who hasn't done any of that. And for this group of folks who are getting discerning about how they're building their business, getting focused on who they want to stay in their properties, getting serious about the structure and the organization and the technology that they're using. This is when this crowd completely reaches new levels. And I've never believed more confidently than right now is the time to be a limited edition vacation rental professional. We can talk about that in a little bit as well.
Exactly. That's leads on to the next question, which is kind of uniqueness, right? How to stand out. So because there's so much talk about that in the oh my god category in Airbnb that they've just released. So how hard is that though? Is there still room for being unique? How do you there's so many different categories, and how do you go about being unique?
So my answer to this question begins back in my historic district of Casco Viejo there. I was walking around with a realtor, and she explained to me that because it was a UNESCO World Heritage Site, you could not build up or out. You had to respect the facade and the blueprint of the historic property. For this reason, there would only ever be a limited amount of properties on the Casco Viejo real estate market. And for this reason, she said, I will never forget it. I remember exactly where we were. She said, this is a limited edition investment, Matt. And I love that. I love that concept. So of course, I got obsessed with it and I started researching everything that has to do with limited edition. I watched the Antiques Roadshow for way too long. And this is the show in which people bring in these objects that they find in their attics, and they have this expert say what it is and how valuable it is. And in almost all the instances of the objects from this show that were significantly more valuable than the other ordinary objects from that time period, there were commonalities of these things, and they were commanding top dollar. And they were building raving fans and loyal niches of followers that would interact with one another. And I was like, this has got to apply to our craft. So this is when I started asking my community of vacation rental owners and managers how this resonates with you and what this looks like in your business. And we settled on the limited edition framework. And it's comprised of 4 things that you can do as a vacation rental owner or manager or host to stand out that nobody else can do. And these are the things literally that do not scale. So if you're ever thinking to yourself, how am I going to compete with Vacasa or Sykes Cottages or Marriott, we must focus on the things that cannot be replicated at scale, and we must draw people's attention to it. So these 4 things that comprise the theory of limited edition are family, owned and operated, local, locally based, i.e. not headquartered elsewhere, specialized in any given property type or region, and finally, surprises, delightful surprises that are woven into the stay that just can't be mass produced or scaled. So these 4 things, family, local, specialized, and surprises, happen to spell out the word floss. Happen to spell out the word floss, which is a good reminder that you don't just do it one time and consider it a success. You must do it regularly. You must repeat these elements in every aspect of your marketing, almost ad nauseum. And you will end up finding that when you repeat the fact that this is a family-owned business, that it's locally based in X destination, that it specializes in this particular kind of property, and that it provides delightful surprises, you will be surprised to find that the guests start using these words in their inquiries. And it's like, wow, they actually are latching on to something. So I believe that doubling down on your limited edition position, this is your value proposition that you're presenting to the public. I believe that doubling down on these things that do not scale not only allows you to stand out, it allows you to command top dollar. And because you have control of the supply, it means that demand will always be greater than supply, which means that you get to operate your business on your terms which also means you get to build relationships with guests that really appreciate your limited edition style. Those guests get along with one another, which basically equates to building these little wonderful communities, these clubs of people who think in similar ways. And this is, I think, the big opportunity that we have as vacation rental hosts right now, is to be that professional limited edition business. I get very excited about this stuff.
Yeah, that's excellent. No, I love that. Maybe just one of the details that I'm intrigued about. So the delightful little surprises, for example, the fourth one, was that the fourth one?
Yep.
What are some of the ones that when you stay with at a vacation rental, that have really made an impression on you?
This is going to sound simple, but a handwritten note goes a really long way. I think that's true about life in general. If you get a handwritten note from someone, it's on you. It's unique.
These days,
like, wow.
Certainly, no?
Yeah. I got all the handwritten notes that I receive on my refrigerator downstairs. I am so proud of those things. So a handwritten note goes a long way. Another good example of a limited edition touch would be an integration with a local business. Mm-hmm. So you can align yourself with the local coffee shop. You can supply the first day's worth of coffee from that coffee shop, branded, along with maybe a little coupon encouraging your guests to go visit that coffee shop because it's a local business that's owned by a local family that specializes in this particular kind of coffee. So I think
telling their story a little bit as well.
Yes, you become suddenly the limited edition ambassador of the other businesses in town that you work with. Amazing. Another really cheap one that requires merely some thought and some energy that can be handed off even to a team member that I've experienced is a picture frame sitting by the side of the bed with a meaningful photo. And this is borderline creepy. You need to have a team discussion about what works and what doesn't. But I've gone to properties and there has been this little photo of myself that they found on the internet somewhere. I was like, wow, that is a really cool little gesture.
Of your guest?
Of your guests.
All right. Yes. That's a little bit creepy.
You got to be careful with it. It works especially well for repeat guests.
Right.
When you've formed a little bit of a relationship. And I am specifically thinking about that picture frame moment. They had also used window markers to say, welcome, Matt.
Amazing.
And they drew like a little sun that was rising. And that didn't cost much. It certainly is not scalable or automatable with technology, but it made me feel like I was in good hands.
Sure.
And I think it's just a wonderful reminder that these limited edition hospitality touches do require a little bit of thought. They do require a system so that it's in place. Maybe you choose the photo frame only for guests who have stayed 3 times, but at least now you have a little system that you can use to click on your workflow to put that into action. So I think thinking about limited edition hospitality gestures as if the guest that's coming is your dear friend is a nice way of going about it.
Interesting. No, I love that. Once I got used to that idea, I think that actually will work really well. And it's certainly a surprise. It will be a surprise, right?
Yes. Another wonderful one is a parting gift. I love the parting gift. If they have a good stay and you gift them something lovely or something meaningful, that is the capstone of the stay, of the experience. That ends up being a marketing investment for the future. And I think we're going to talk about marketing investments, but I love the idea of a parting gift. You can find a local nonprofit, Henrietta Kiss in Rome, gifted me a wonderful little box, a hand-painted box from a local organization that helps children out of poverty through art.
Amazing.
And such a beautiful little gesture at the end of a wonderful stay that cements my allegiance, my loyalty. The next time I'm going to Rome, there is absolutely nowhere else I'm going to stay.
Absolutely. Yes, so let's talk a bit more about marketing and how much time and effort, and should you be on TikTok, and where do
No,
you start?
just
No.
kidding.
Yeah, are you on TikTok? I forgot to
No,
check.
I'm
No,
not. But then again, I haven't been managing properties for a number of years, so I
that's
can't.
true. That's true.
Yeah.
You've got an excuse, okay.
Are you on TikTok?
I am. I'm observing at the moment. I will do something one day when I'll surprise, where you'll be surprised. Anyway, go ahead, tell us about marketing.
Well, marketing is a very broad word. People throw it around a lot. Frankly, I don't really know what it means anymore. I've started thinking about marketing in a new way. And I'll start with how I used to think about marketing. I used to think about marketing as activities to promote generating more bookings. And explicitly, I used to think about things like a logo and a website and an email marketing campaign and using listing sites and follow-up text messages. I used to think of all of these things as marketing activities, and they still are. But I believe we've shifted into a new phase, specifically in the vacation rental sector. And I believe we need to look at hospitality gestures that we were just talking about as the new marketing. Why? Because if the objective of marketing is to generate more bookings or to acquire new homeowners into your portfolio, each new contact, each new booking, each new homeowner has a cost. There was a cost to acquire that customer, right?
Sure.
And it's very helpful, by the way, to calculate approximately what is the cost. And the way that you would do that is look back over the last year, add up all of your marketing costs. How much money did you pay out to generate bookings? Divide it by the amount of actual bookings you had, and you'll get a rough estimate of how much it costs to generate a new booking. That cost might be $100.
Mm-hmm.
That cost might be $500. That cost might be $50. But knowing approximately what it costs to generate a new booking is very helpful. When we start to look at the broader hospitality gestures as marketing investments, you suddenly realize, wait a minute, if I can get this person to stay again next time, or if I can get them to refer a friend to stay with me, all of a sudden that bottle of wine that I gifted them that was 20 euros is peanuts compared to what I would be paying out to an OTA. So I believe if we shift the marketing lens and we start looking at the hospitality gestures, this is everything that happens after they book, that leads up to the stay. Most importantly, that happens in the home, the moment they enter to the moment they depart. I believe if we start looking at those hospitality gestures as the new marketing, we suddenly are able to capture this direct booking world of direct bookings that everybody seems to be after. Yet they never talk about in the direct booking strategies the actual guests' interactions in the home. So anything now that could potentially generate a repeat or a referral booking, I believe is worth considering.
That's interesting. So in terms of things that advice, things that if there's one thing that you think that, and when somebody starts out that they absolutely must do, and one thing that they should absolutely not do. I know you've touched on some of these things, but are there, are there's like the biggest mistake and the biggest thing that they should do?
I think what they should not, what they should do first is focus on safety.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that will change everything if you're not thinking about creating a safe environment. And we see way too many accidents and emergencies in which people die. I mean, people can die in your home due to your negligence.
Mm-hmm.
And that is serious. There's nothing more serious than ensuring that your property is safe. And we can link to Justin Ford over at Breezeway. He's probably the world's biggest proponent of vacation rental safety, has all kinds of how-to guides to at least make sure that you're not overlooking some really dangerous things. So I think that is really primordial to your business and, frankly, the lives of the humans that will be staying in it. So please consider safety before you start hosting guests. On the things that you should do, or should not do, rather, just winging it is a recipe for failure. Not surrounding yourself with people who have built something that you admire, something that you'd like to create down the line. Neglecting to speak with those folks and ask them what goes into it, or even just ask them what they'd use for any given problem, I think leads to probably back to the burnout conversation. It accelerates your failure because you are trying to solve everything yourself, or you've gotten information from the wrong people. So I like to suggest again that everybody surround themselves with at least 5. Invite them out to lunch if you live in the same place, or bring them crumpets, or send them a nice little gift and ask for a phone chat. I believe if you can find those 5 people, learn from them, get an idea of the landmines, get an idea of the workload, get an idea if this is actually for you, you then have an average. Your path is then an average of those 5 people. And I think that makes growing much more sustainable.
Okay. We talked about direct bookings and, the importance of getting direct bookings. But when you first start out, how important is it to list on the OTAs, and how do you know where to start and which ones to list on?
I think it's important to list on the OTAs always. Mm-hmm. I think it's the cheapest way to generate leads. I mean, it's incredible what these companies have done. They have built an avenue for anybody. My neighbor, Gilbert, who's 70, from Cuba. They've given Gilbert the chance to turn his property into a world distributed hospitality offering. This is amazing. So to ignore them or to not use them would be ridiculous. Now, we need to be very conscious of what we are signing up for. What are the terms that are dictated by the listing sites? When I see people getting all angry that listing sites have changed their policies, that's a sign that they weren't aware of what they were getting involved in. That's a sign of poor planning. Getting aware of what you are signing up for and building these listing sites into your marketing strategy. So back to our conversation about why I believe the home, the hospitality gestures are the future of marketing. Let's take a single use case here, right? We have a guest who we use the OTAs to discover in the first place because most guests are on those OTAs. We then receive the inquiry and begin communicating a limited edition style of hospitality. We're a family owned and operated. We're locally based. We're specialized in specifically this kind of stay, and we will surprise you delightfully with our little gestures. Once you begin forming that relationship with the guest, once they arrive in the home and they have this experience that's like, whoa, that was way better than the average Airbnb that I've ever booked. And you have done a good enough job of ushering in that guest into your domain. You've used a tool like Stayfy to capture their email address. Suddenly, you have used the OTA to generate a repeat or referral booking, an advocate of your property. And if you do this enough times, this is the beauty of having a small business that sells one product, 52 widgets every year you have to sell this thing. If you do this every time, much more quickly than you might expect, you begin to generate a hopper of people who love you and who will refer you business. This is why I think the listing sites are the most powerful starting engine of the entire marketing portfolio. But we must understand exactly where they fit. And as we simultaneously, while using these sites, begin building our own brand, our own nurture marketing funnel. Then when the listing site does something that you don't approve of, they've crossed a line that you're not willing to commit to, it's not the end of the world because you've been building your own diversified marketing portfolio.
You haven't got all your eggs in one basket. Yeah.
And most importantly, you control
Mm-hmm.
the system as opposed to racing your horse on someone else's race course.
Race course. So leading on to the Airbnb summer release in 2022, have you seen people, hosts in your community being negatively impacted by that? How has the reaction been, and what have you advised them to do?
I'm embarrassed to say I don't know too much about the release, and I'm proud to say that people in the community don't talk about it much.
Okay, well
There's
that probably is a good sign.
yeah,
I know
there's some
also that,
alerts, like
yeah,
heads up, this has changed, but
yeah.
it's a sign. It's a sign that you've been preparing for this day. It's a sign that your preparation, your positioning, your focus on doing those little things right is suddenly moving into this entirely new stratosphere. And this is back to our topic of opportunity, moving right into the future right now. I think these folks who are not freaked out about some summer release that I'm not even aware of, that's a really good sign that you're on the right track.
Okay, good answer. So now, finally, I know we've been at it for some time, but just a few questions, and finally to get to know you as a person a little bit more. So Matt, the person, if you want to tell us a little bit what you do when you're not thinking and breathing vacation rentals.
I actually do that like all the time. Even when I'm swimming, I swim every morning, I'm thinking about vacation rentals. When I travel, I'm asking people about vacation rentals. I live in Miami. I relocated here in the middle of the pandemic. It was an amazing choice. It ended up being all the little things that I loved about living in Central America, plus all the first world amenities that you can enjoy, like getting my microphone delivered within one day. Just awesome. I also travel quite a bit. My pleasure and my business lives tend to converge quite a bit as I go to meet lots of our community members, observe what they're doing, and so many of them are just proud ambassadors of their destination. So of course that leads to fun experiences and food and lessons. I think that lessons for life. That's my thing.
Okay, and if you didn't end up in this industry accidentally, what were you on the way to doing? What did you see yourself doing? And what would you have liked to be if you weren't, if it wasn't for the fact that you ended up as a expert or a celebrity in vacation rentals?
A professional wrestler for sure.
Wrestler, really?
No, just kidding. I think I would probably be a academic, like a researcher, because
Right.
most of what I do is research stuff. My mother is a scientist. I get really excited about digging deep into stuff and learning it and untangling it and packaging it and presenting it to people in ways that they can learn it. I think I would probably be some kind of teacher or researcher.
Okay, well, luckily for vacation rental hosts, you ended up in this industry, and that's been amazing. Really good advice, and really expertly and honestly answered. So, thanks again for your time, and of course, this is a chance for you also to tell us a bit more about maybe some of the projects that we haven't spoken about, like Homerunners, for example. Would be, tell us a bit more about what that entails.
Sure. Thanks for the chance. My newsletter, the one that you mentioned at the beginning of the call, we like to refer to it as the most thoughtful newsletter in the industry. We do not teach you how to get rich off Airbnb. There's plenty of other newsletters that purport to do that. That is free. And that is the thing that most people come in contact with first upon entering the VRMB ecosystem. You can just sign up on our homepage. Once somebody is part of the newsletter, they sometimes feel that the tips are really resonating and they'd like to take their business to the next level. And for those individuals, we built a private community. It's the longest running community of professionals in the vacation rental space. We have over 1,100 members around the world. And the beautiful thing about this community is that no matter the size of the business, whether it's one property or 1,000, everybody is focusing on the things we've talked about today. And in fact, most of the things we've talked about today, I have gleaned from the community. So it's a group of what we think of as the most thoughtful and creative vacation rental professionals under one virtual roof. Beyond the community, we started sharing stories. We felt that telling the stories of the most innovative owners, managers, hosts is the best form of advocacy for our industry. It's the best form of education in sharing the best practices, what worked and what did it, with the broader community. So we interview select community members for the Unlocked podcast that you mentioned, which is also free. You can subscribe to that on any podcast platform. As we began interviewing folks, we found that some of them were running businesses that are changing the world. And these are the folks that are doing things on a completely separate level than I could have ever imagined myself. And for these individuals, we developed a docuseries, which is a television show called Homerunners, which aims to go behind the scenes of the world's most innovative owners and managers and find out how the memories are made. And as you might imagine, it's not always pretty, like they may depict on some of the other TV shows about our industry. It's not easy by any means. But if you know what you are doing and you're passionate about it, you have the chance to change hospitality. And hospitality has the power to change the world. So Homerunners is not out just yet. We will be announcing when it is ready, but we've officially completed our first 2 episodes. You can see the trailers for that on our website. And we'll actually be showing the first episode at VRMA in Las Vegas this year on the grand stage at Caesar's Palace.
Fantastic. Wow.
Yeah, very exciting. I don't think we've shared that publicly just yet. So there's the scoop. It'll be free to attend, RSVP. It will be a very special moment for me, for my team, and hopefully for the community as well. So if anybody is watching this and would like to attend, feel free to email me, Matt with 2 T's at vrmb.com. We'll add you to the list.
Fantastic. Well, looking forward to that and looking forward to seeing what else you get up to in the future. But thank you very much for your time today. And speak
and shout
again
out
soon.
to Lodgify. Lodgify has always done what I consider to be the best content in the industry. That means helping people with great information that they can make use of their own way. They might not even use Lodgify, but helping people instead of trying to sell them is the best way to create relationships in this industry. And I think that's something that should resonate with all of our hosts as well. So good on you all.
Thank you. Coming from you, that's a major compliment. So thank you very much on behalf of Lodgify. So speak soon and thank you very much.
Ciao.